As you progressed through bachelor's, master's, PhD, and postdoc stages, what were the key lessons you learned at each level? How did you maintain the right mindset?
Thank you once again, Sadiksha, for that generous sort of introduction that you had about me. Uh, that was very nice, praiseworthy, I would say. Uh, so I think that most of you, I don't know whether, some of you know me, right? But I guess most of you should know me if you are economics student, particularly doing masters in economics in Central Department of Economics and beyond. Right, whether in Kathmandu or outside of Kathmandu. So, yeah, so talking about my profession, yeah, I'm kind of, you can call me a dedicated teacher, as Sadiq Shah rightly pointed out. So I've been teaching like for almost, let's say, 2 decades uh, at Central Department of Economics, Tribhuvan University, and currently an associate professor teaching and doing research in economics. So if you talk about my academic journey, it's a bit interesting, I would say. Uh, uh, Maybe I can come to that point how it is interesting a bit later. But as you talked about how did you progress through my, the bachelor's, master's, PhD, and postdoc stages, and what are the key lessons that I learned, across this academic journey? So you see, during those periods, like when I did my master's, it was back in like 2004, 2005. Um, you know, uh, so we used to, take economics classes, of course, at Central Department of Economics. But, the things were very kind of, sort of, the way of teaching the pedagogy, you can say, and the modes of teaching, let us say, the use of technology, for example, or access to technology was not that the way it is today, right? And so it was really difficult. So give you a very, a good example. We even did not know, right, what is research paper, what are research papers, right? And and what do you, get, what is the outcome of writing a research paper? So you see, econometrics was a kind of far-fetched thing, right? Econometrics was kind of a taboo during those days. I would say there were some students who would take econometrics, and it was sort of optional course, right? But the classes were not regular and stuffs like that, things like that. So people used to those who take econometrics classes used to study on their own, right? Seeking a mentorship, for example, outside. So it was really difficult during those days. So I didn't know about research paper. I didn't know about econometrics. I didn't know about empirics and stuff like that. So economics is how so what I how I perceived economics was like how people showed us, right. So this is kind of economics in Nepal, right. Going to, for example, the discussion okay, sorry, the budget program, right, post budget, pre budget discussion programs talking about monetary policies and fiscal policies, what are its implications. So that was kind of thinking, right. We talk about national policies, macro policies and stuff like that, so that was sort of perception. But things changed, things changed when I moved abroad for my further studies, for my graduate studies. Uh, and I learned that there are things far beyond that, what I used to sort of perceive, or what I used to sort of think. Uh, so when I went for my graduate studies abroad, then I learned that about research paper, the importance of research paper writing, you know sort of empirical papers, and what are the importances of writing research papers, so on and so forth, and learning about the software skills, right? So during those periods, we didn't know about, R or Stata or SPS or stuff like that, right? So when I moved to, Japan, GRIPS National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, so I, came across, these sort of, things like doing empirical research in economics, learning, software skills and stuff like that. So you see, but what I see today is it's a very different kind of scenario right now, right? So you have access to technology, you have everything, right? So whatever you want to do, you can do. Access to information and stuff like that. So things were not that easier during those days, I would say. So that was the kind of journey that I had, and I think for mentorship during those days, I don't know, like nowadays you have a proper network, right? You go to seminars, to conferences, you contact people by, for example, email or source them through, using LinkedIn or platforms like that. Uh, but during those days, the faculty, you know, were the important sources of how do you say, like, mentorship. So they were the one who would guide you through your academic journey, right? So what is the kind of the score you have, and what are the sort of potential sort of the jobs, or let us say the further studies, kind of further studies that you could pursue in your future, so the faculty were the ones who were the mentors during those days. So, and the other, but I think, yeah, I already talked about that. Nowadays it's not very difficult to have a good mentorship, but you need to kind of uh, how do you say it? You need to separate sort of good mentorship and bad mentorship. And I think the knowledge that you have, and the information, the stock of information that you accumulate over time, right? So that gives you sort of a competitive edge as to how you define a good, and how do you identify a good and bad mentorship, right? So there are lots of people, coming to you and advising you and stuff like that, right? But you need to process those information, analyze those information before making a decision based on that sort of advice or suggestions that you receive. So so for, like, you also talked about evolution, how did I evolve over time? It's not like that sort of big evolution thing that I can share. But what I think is that so I had, like, because I will talk about it later on, because I was a management student, right? Management student during my plus two and bachelor's levels, and I switched to the economics stream. So I had to struggle, doing sort of mathematics stuffs, right? Because my background was not mathematics, right? So far as my plus two and bachelor level education are concerned. Right? So I was a management student, so no core mathematics, right? So economics is sort of mathematics as well, right? It's a language, but still, everything is mathematics in there. So I had a hard time, learning after before I go to for my graduate studies. After I go to my graduate studies, I really had a hard time, learning the concepts, the core concepts that you need in, in economics. I had really a hard time. For example, like, talk about differential calculus, linear algebra, real analysis and stuff like that. But I kind of worked on my weaknesses, right? On how to learn at least a basic concepts in economics, basic concepts in mathematics, and other sort of skills that I may need when I go for my graduate studies and beyond. So and then the second thing I want to, besides things like mathematics, that incompatibility, you know, between management and economics, I would say. Besides that, another thing was that, like, I was kind of pretty shy sort of person, right? I'm not a very good speaker. Still, I'm not. I know that. Not a good speaker, not a good public speaker. I would used to sigh away. So you see, when I go to my graduate studies for my graduate studies, things changed, right? Because you need to face your professors, you need to face your fellow students, you need to present your work frequently, to your fellow students, to your faculties and stuffs like that. So that sort of changed a bit, that kind of, the signage or, so stuff. Yeah. So I practiced, presentations, and I try to, so what might be the, for example, possible questions that may be, asked. That might be asked during your presentation or after your presentation. So you prepare for those sort of, questions, the possible questions that that the audiences or your faculties or your fellow students might ask in a conference setting, in a workshop setting, or stuffs like that. So I really worked hard on that side as well. So you see that now, if you look into, for example, my profile, I have now presented in the world's best conferences, world's renowned conferences in economics. So that is also very important, right? I don't know, like during those days, I see kids, are smarter, right? Doing their master's level, and they are smarter. They can, speak, they can face public and stuff like that. But during that time, it was a bit a different sort of story. I don't know, it was only about me, but I, worked on that sort of. So what I want to say is that I worked on my weaknesses over time, and try to, address those sort of gaps that I think that I had over time. So that is how, I kind of, so what do you, so I am here today, right? So learning through weaknesses, and working on skills that I lack, for example, the mathematics, the software skills and stuff like that. And yeah, the presenting in conferences, public speaking, as things like that. So that is how things happen. Okay, so Disha, that is all about my academic journey that you asked me to talk about.